In the past, for many noncustodial parents, an order of supervised timeshare meant never again being able to spend free time with their children. Fortunately, thanks to a new breed of supervising professionals, this has changed. We'll be talking to two such timeshare professionals today on Fathers Are Parents Too. Welcome to Fathers Are Parents Too. We're here today with Nancy Fallows and Marie O'Leary, and Nancy and Marie both are the directors of Timeshare Supervision Services. What does that mean? What do you do?
Well, what that means is that when there is a reason why the parent is not allowed to be alone with the child and needs an objective third person there, we are the ones that do that, or people that we train, people that work in our services. That enables the parents to maintain a relationship with that child while they're sorting through whatever issues have come up that have caused this to happen, or to go into a court order. Oh. So that this way the relationship doesn't end, the bond isn't broken, and they can go on visiting with the children while it's all sorted out by whoever it is that sorts those things out.
Now, is this something then that's implemented by the parents themselves or by the courts, or Marie?
It could be a little bit of both. In many cases, the court has ordered the visiting parent to be supervised. And then sometimes a client will call me on a suggestion, or just they heard about my service, and they'll call me and ask if they could have a couple visitations supervised to prevent allegations from happening again.
So in other words, maybe the parent has alleged that during a time the other parent was alone with the child, something happened, and they want you to... Well, now that tells me that you might be actually somehow then reporting this to someone, and you had said an objective third party, which doesn't mean they're mutually exclusive, but do you do that then? So what you do is you actually are the person that puts themselves in the middle during a non-custodial parent's time with their child. Do you report what happens to someone, or are you just there sort of as a peacekeeper?
We do report. Let me back up a little bit, because you mentioned in the middle, and that really isn't where we are. We're not in the middle. We're on the outside, observing. The visit is between the parent and the child or children, and that's real important, that we want them to know that we should be as unobtrusive as possible in the background. We're there really to protect the interests of all parties involved. And yes, we do make reports to the courts as they request them, because while we're doing this, somebody is trying to sort out more long-term parenting arrangements, and the information that is gathered at these visits is valuable to those people who are making those kinds of decisions.
And that's been your experience as well?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
Now, what about in the cases where you mentioned again that a client might contact you? That's really interesting to me. Can you sort of talk about that a little more? That where the client is coming to you and saying, basically, it sounds like, protect me from this possibly occurring, this allegation.
I had a client that the mom and dad were not married, and it was an infant. And the father was accused of not having really the ability to raise an infant, and what his parenting skills were. And he called me all on his own, and I supervised him, and he was, frankly, a natural-born father. I mean, he just did a wonderful job. He really did. He was very good with his child. And I wrote the reports, and I sent them to Family Court Services and to the attorneys, both attorneys.
And so, do you know what the outcome? It sounds like that probably meant that sort of took the wind out of the sails of this allegation that he was not a very good parent.
Yes, it did.
Now, what about when the court gets involved? Does that sometimes happen as well, where perhaps the court is ordering one of you to supervise these timeshares because the other parent is saying horrible things are happening, and boy, we got him because now his timeshare is supervised, and it comes back to them because, in fact, what you guys find out is that the parent's a wonderful parent and there's no problem?
In the majority of cases, it is referred from the courts. It comes on a court order, and sometimes the parent who has to have supervision is not real happy about it. It isn't the best way and the easiest way to visit with your children. I always try to put them at ease and let them know, though, we're making no judgments about why they're there. We're only there to make the visits good and to help them in developing that relationship with their children. So their court is involved. They have some interest in knowing really, they're trying to figure out what they're going to do, and they have some interest in knowing that. Yes, and sometimes the parent who is insisting on it or suggesting it is hoping that there will be information that will be, that they can use against the other parent. I would say more often than not, that isn't what happens, however. Majority of times, we're able to make pretty positive reports. Now, my service is a little different than Marie's, in that Marie's an individual, private person doing it, and I direct a private nonprofit corporation that was set up to do these kinds of programs. And so I don't actually observe the visits myself. I work with the clients in other ways, and we have trained people who observe the visits. So we're able to do a lot more at one time, and we do them all on the same site, whereas she goes with the clients to their home or various places. So our service is a little different. Also, being a parent educator by profession, I have another important dimension that I put into it, and that is to really help them in developing that relationship. So I really let the parents know that I see three objectives. The first is to provide a safe, nurturing, comfortable place for them to visit with their children. And we try to have the environment child-friendly, conducive to them enjoying themselves and having good visits. The second is to help them in developing that relationship. So they may get a little coaching as to how they might improve. If they haven't seen the child, for example, for a long time, sometimes they're pushing a little too hard, and may advise them, ease up a little bit and let it happen, it'll happen, and we give them encouragement. And the third one is to provide those reports for the courts, so the courts have that piece of information.
So now what happens when you have a parent who needs that encouragement or coaching, and that's going to go into the report, and won't that maybe detrimentally affect the outcome of the court's decision? Oh, gee, he didn't really know what to do. He needed help, knowing how to change a diaper or feeding the child. Is that?
Not at all, really, because what we're looking for is movement and progress. And if we have a parent in the beginning that was a little awkward and didn't know how to do it, and we give them a little coaching, and by the end they've learned, that actually looks very good for that parent.
Now, Marie, your practice or your business is private, so it's just you and you're the one there.
It's myself, and I have 4 staff people.
Oh, so I'm curious what led you into this. Again, this is a fairly new field, and I can't imagine, although I could be wrong, that when you were a little girl and someone said, Marie, when you grow up, what do you want to do? You said, I want to help people sort out, their problems with their kids and supervise their timeshare.
No,
how did you end up doing this?
I was teaching preschool, and one of the children in the classroom that I was teaching, the parents was an MFCC, and they had a particular client that needed to be supervised.
Let's back up for the audience. An MFCC?
Marriage, family, and child counselor.
Oh, counselor, okay.
And they had a child that she was counseling, and the child needed to be supervised. This particular case was not in the court system at all. They had gone through the court system, and it was a couple years down the line, and they were in therapy. And the child was doing fine, and the whole family was in the therapy group together. But the girl was now 14 and wanted to see the dad outside of the therapy office. And the therapist said to me, I just want them to just have fun. Just let them go out and do the things that they like to do and have fun. And that's what I do. That was the oldest child that I've ever supervised has been 14, and I've gone from basically an infant, preschoolers, up to about 14. And we take them to, because mine is a private versus hers, we choose the location of the visit. It can be the local park, the beach, the zoo, miniature golf, bowling, according to the weather. We change, we go wherever it's safe for the child, and wherever I can visibly see them and always be within earshot of the conversation.
So now you said that differs from, how does your organization, how do the timeshares work with your organization?
The biggest difference is we rarely go off-site. We have one place where they come and they visit with the children there at that location. And that enables us to have just a little more control. It also enables us to do it at a little less expense because we can train people to do it and to be there, and they're supervised. They have someone else who supervises them also. So we're able to do maybe 5 to 8 visits at a time in the one location.
Now, you had said that that more often than not, I think this is what you said, that in cases where the court has referred a family for supervision based on allegations or concerns of something going on between the non-custodial parent and the child, that the reports end up being positive for that parent. And you know, I opened the show by saying that it used to be, certainly in my experience, and those are some of my clients who had come to me having been through this, that you know, an order of supervised timeshare was basically a death knell. I mean, you never got out of that hole. So clearly something has changed. There's a new trend where supervised timeshare can actually be a positive, effective tool for the non-custodial parent. Has this been your experience, this change in perception, and to what would you attribute that? I mean, it's wonderful, and I'm really glad, but why?
Well, the courts really think it should be a short-term thing. They know that it's not really an ideal way to build relationships. And the focus is on the child, what is really best for the child. And one thing we know is that children need to have good relationships with both parents, and they need to have both parents involved in their lives. If the parent forever is only going to be able to see the child a couple of hours a week with someone else supervising, that really isn't the best way to build a relationship. And so our goal would be to provide this as a short-term solution so that eventually they can get to the point where they can take that child and be alone with that child. And often if there's other issues for the parent, they may be in counseling, they may be in substance abuse treatment, other things that are going on in their lives to help them get to the place where they can be alone with the child. Whatever were the problems can be fixed. And I would say in the majority of cases that does happen.
Yes, I would say the same thing. I have quite a lot of cases that come to me under different various circumstances. The lawyers call me, or the judges call me, or the client calls me, and we go, and I tell the visiting parent, I said, look, I'm not a security guard. I'm not to be threatened. I want you to have a normal, natural visit with that child. And even though I'm going to be there, act as if I'm not there. Act as if I'm just in the background.
Can they ever get to that point, though? I mean, I imagine it's very tough.
Oh, yeah, very.
First.
The first visit's always very awkward. First visit is always awkward. I try to meet with the parent, and I usually try to meet with the custodial parent and the child first, so that the child is the one who's made to be very comfortable. Okay. We as supervisors try to remain completely neutral. We do not get involved in the politics of the court system at all, okay? We want to remain completely neutral. We are in the best interest of the child and the safety of the child, okay? In my instances, I have home visits many times that the home is not always a safe place due to smoke alarms, computer wires, just various kinds of things that are chemicals, household chemicals that are not out, first aid kits not available, various things like that that I have to be aware of. It's all for the safety of the child. And I just document it. There's no judgments. I draw no conclusions, no interpretations, no opinions, no recommendations. I am not allowed to do that. I'm strictly an observer.
Sort of like a NATO person.
Yep, that's it.
Okay, well, on that thought, we're going to take a break, and then we'll be back. And I have a question for you, and then I'm sure the audience has some questions as well. We'll be right back.
I'd like to talk to you about divorce. Not what it means to you as a parent, but what it means to your children, coming from someone whose parents are divorced. Some divorced parents feel the need to involve their children in disagreements by putting the other parent down. If you're a parent, step-parent, girlfriend, or boyfriend of someone who is involved in a divorce, please don't involve the children in the issue. It's a terrible feeling for someone to hear negative things about the other parent, no matter how old they are or how true or insignificant you feel the comment is. You also have to know that the effects of trying to cut the other parent out of your children's life are even more devastating. FREE, the Father's Rights and Equality Exchange, is an organization that firmly believes in having both parents in your child's life. For more information, call 1-500-4-DADS. I'm lucky in the fact that my mother has never interfered with my father's relationship. In fact, she's always encouraged me to stay involved with him. But coming from someone who's been through a divorce with my parents, I realized that by giving comments to your children that are negative about the other parent, it will only cause them to resent you. My parents may not always agree with each other, but I know I'm glad to have both of them in my life, and your kids will be too. Right, Mom?
Right. Welcome back to Fathers Are Parents Too. Today we're talking with Nancy Fallows and Marie O'Leary, who are both timeshare supervisors. And I wanted to ask you, you mentioned right before the break that you meet first with the custodial parents so you can meet with the child because you really want to make sure they're comfortable. And
Correct.
that brought up for me just the whole issue about what about the child? How do they react? I'm sure each age level is different, but suddenly they have to have this stranger with them when they're with daddy or with mommy. And what does that do to them, and how do they adjust to that, and how do you handle that?
Well, when I meet them first, it makes them very comfortable. If they know that they're being supervised for safety reasons, and I'm there, then they're comfortable. And then I let them know, look, then after that, you know, you can relax. You can. It's okay to enjoy visiting with your parent, and I'm going to be here. And if you have any problems, you can come and talk to me. But otherwise, you just have a good time.
Now, what about a case where the issue of safety has been raised by the parent in a punitive manner, and the child was never worried about their safety, and suddenly you come in and the message from you is you don't have to be scared anymore, and the child's thinking, did I need to be? I mean, how do you, I'm sure you have to be very tactful when you're addressing this in case there really wasn't a safety issue. How do you handle that?
Well, that's a judgment thing. That's an interpretation. We're not allowed to do that. You know.
I would say the majority of cases, the children probably aren't really scared.
Yeah.
There are some where they've witnessed domestic violence or there's been real abuse, but the majority of them come in real eager to see the other parent. And of course, we have another advantage in that we are at a child care center where there are 4 or 5 visits going on at a time usually. So when they come in, there's lots of different people there. So it's not just them, the parent, and the supervisor. It's them, a lot of other parents, other children, and lots of supervisors. And so it isn't quite as obvious as this person is here watching every move that daddy or mommy and I make. And that, I think, eases that a little bit. And if the children are frightened, they will usually let you know that, or you can sense that, and then you do talk to them about the fact that if you're concerned, this is a person that you can talk to and that you can go to and feel comfortable.
So what happens, I imagine it must happen at some point that some children are of an age and of a mindset where they'll say to you, why are you here with us? Even though you've sort of explained it, you know, how do you address when, you know, you can't, as you said, you have to be neutral and it's not your job to educate them or make a judgment call, so how do you handle that?
Oftentimes I get one parent that says, so-and-so, the child doesn't want to see the other parent. And I think sometimes they set that child up to do that so that the visit can be short. And I tell the child, I go, well, you know, if you want to see your, you know, that parent, that dad or that mom again, I need to see you on a normal visit. I have to have something to document. If you go there for 5 minutes and say, I want to go home, then I have nothing to send back to the courts. And if you really do want to see your daddy again or your mommy again, I need to see you in a normal environment, just having fun. I just want you guys just to have fun. Just pick an activity that you want to do, and we're just going to have a good time.
Sort of think of you as a friend who's along for the outing.
Yeah, I'm interactive. I partake in conversation with them. I'm like there with them. But if they go swimming, a certain client at summertime, they had a pool. I don't go swimming with them, or I don't go bowling with them, or play miniature golf with them. But I am there, and they know that I'm there, and we interact. But I don't partake in the activity. But they always know that I'm there.
Okay, we have a question from the audience for you. Yes.
I was wondering if you've ever had a case where court-ordered visitation or court-ordered timeshare where the child actually tells the visiting parent, my mommy says you have to see me like this because you've been bad. And if you have seen anything like that, is that a reportable event, and how is that viewed?
That's a good question. It's kind of a tough one.
Yeah, it is.
It comes up a lot in terms of them saying things that have gone on with the other parent.
Right.
And the thing that we have to remember is we're really there to observe this visit and what's going on there, and we can't be responsible for what the custodial parent is doing. And that can be real tough sometimes, because if the child is anxious about the visit, it is often because they are being set up, as Marie pointed out, by the other parent. Now, I will talk with those parents, and I will counsel with the parents, and those things may go in the report, and no, it will not necessarily look good for the custodial parent if it appears that they're setting them up. And I will talk to the parents about that and encourage them to make that as positive a situation as possible for the child, that it's really up to them to frame it. How much the child looks forward to or doesn't look forward to the visit has a lot to do with them, and I let them know that, and that our expectation is that they will be cooperative and they will help the child enjoy that visit. But we really obviously can't control the custodial parent.
Yeah, to add to that, that has happened to me many times, and I don't know the legal terms that well, but I think the term is called hearsay. Okay, we cannot use that at all. I've had many a parent say, "Well, my child said such and such after the visit was over." I can't put that on my report.
We can document anything the child says.
Anything the child says on the visit.
But
anything that's hearsay that the parent repeats that the other parent is doing or saying or allowing that child to do, even if it's misbehavior, that cannot go in our reports.
Have you ever had a case that you were aware of where perhaps the child, either intentionally or inadvertently, was the one that set the supervised parent up? For example, I mean, I've heard of a case where an adolescent girl who really was angry at Daddy for not, giving into some demand that she had made, basically told Mom that Dad had hit her when he hadn't. It was her way of getting back at Dad, and suddenly he found himself supervised. So it was really a setup by the child. Again, I'm sure not realizing what she had put into motion, but have you ever run into that you knew of, or hopefully not?
We've certainly had cases where that's been stated. One of the things that's real important for us is to not, quote, buy into either parent's story. We're going to hear both sides, and it's real important, as Marie said earlier, for us to maintain an objectivity. And so we try not to get, that it really isn't our job to sort that out. It's our job to observe, to record, to coach them in their parenting skills only, and to be able to leave that up to the people that have all the information. We only have one tiny piece of information. There are usually mediators, attorneys, evaluators, perhaps attorneys for the children, maybe a special master on the case, who have bigger pieces of information. And we give them our piece, they put it all together, and they're the ones that make those kinds of decisions.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with that too. That did happen with one of my cases. Same thing, I didn't get involved in it at all, and then sure enough, by the time it got to a special master, the child was told by his mother to make this accusation against his father.
Wow. And just for clarification again for the audience, the special master is basically someone who's been appointed to supervise the case, basically micromanage the case.
Correct.
In the stead of having the judge having to always make orders.
And it can be a psychologist and or a lawyer.
Okay. I think we have another question from the audience. Yes.
Yeah, I was just wondering if you've ever had a supervision where you had to intervene or stop it or call the police or some problem developed of that magnitude. Is that very common?
I wouldn't say it's very common. It's quite rare when it happens, but we have had those cases. We intervene if we perceive that the child is unsafe either physically or emotionally. So if the parent is saying or doing anything that is making the child feel uncomfortable or maybe damaging the child's self-esteem. Now, when we intervene, the first step is most often to pull the parent aside and just talk to the parent about what they're doing that's inappropriate. And then, in nearly all cases, the parent is going to stop that and respond. And then the visit can go on. If they don't respond, then we may have to stop the visit and ask them to leave. I can think of one case where we had to stop a visit because the parent became abusive to the monitor and to the staff, and this is inappropriate for them to be doing this in front of the child, to be doing it anyway, but especially in front of the child. So in that case, then we stopped the visit. But it is very rare that that happens.
Yes, I stopped one also. It was very rare. It was the first time that we were just going to go to a park. It was going to be very easy. Little girl met me, did not want to sit in the front seat with the visiting parent. And so I sat in the back seat with her. There wasn't enough room. The father tried to warm her up a little bit. She was just not going to warm up. And I just decided that I can't force this child on this visit. I just can't. And I had seen that the mother had not pulled out of the parking lot, so I said, I'm going to have to terminate this. He did not do anything inappropriate. I just felt like this was not a good setting for this child, so I brought the child back to the mother.
Wow. Okay, I think we have time for one more question, and I think we have one more question.
The other question was about evaluating parenting skills. I mean, I hear that phrase used a lot, and parenting skills, I mean, it's not like arithmetic skills where there's a right answer to what's 2 plus 2.
Absolutely.
There are a lot of different ways to get a right answer in parenting. So, especially in different cultures and different societies, they've got very different concepts of how appropriately to raise children. So how do you evaluate someone's parenting skills without that evaluation simply being your own personal bias?
That's a very good question. I've been a parent educator for almost 30 years, so I feel like I have a pretty good background with lots of different kinds of families. I would say that the way I do that is, how is the relationship between the parent and child? Is what the parent doing building that relationship? Is it bringing them closer together? Are they able to share time in a positive way? And most of the coaching that I do with parents is going to be along those lines, things that they can do to improve that relationship. That is one of the primary goals of our agency. And we do also in our agency do some divorce education with parents and children to help them to build relationships following the divorce and separation. And it is about building relationships, and that's the way I look at it.
Okay, we have about 20 seconds left.
Yeah, and I was just going to add to that is what is in the best interest of the child? Is the child's needs being met as opposed to the parent's needs? Okay, that is the most important thing.
Well, I'd like to thank both you, Nancy, and you, Marie. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
And it's just so wonderful that we have people like you doing this that are really in there advocating for children to have a relationship with both parents, because that's certainly what we need. And thank you all for joining us, and be sure to join us next time on Fathers Are Parents Too.